Daniela's presentation is called Restart Product Market Consumption Changes for a More Sustainable and Participatory Heritage Tourism. I'm just going to pass over now to you, Daniela, for your presentation.
Thank you very much. So let me start by the Croatian word for interpretation, which is interpretacija. So I believe it's like a common word for all of us. Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen. Please let me know if you see it.
Yes, that's fine. If you put
Excellent.
it on to, yes, that's perfect.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so okay, to pronounce my name a little bit more correctly, I'm Daniela Angelina Jelincic. So all Croatians are pretty much Čičs at the end. So I am working with the Institute for Development and International Relations, which is a public research institution. My primary research interest is in cultural tourism. This is what I started with, and I continued researching it. But I also specialize in cultural heritage management, creative industries, experience design. So all those topics which are somehow connected with heritage interpretation. So as you said, I'm going to present a talk on product, market, and consumption changes for a more sustainable and participatory heritage tourism. So as I told you, I am a researcher, and what I'm going to focus this presentation on is from the perspective of heritage tourism. However, I will try not to bore you with it, because you know that lately there have been like tons of academic papers focusing on COVID-19 and what it brought to heritage tourism. So I will tell you something on that topic, but I tried to refocus this presentation from the perspective of heritage interpretation. So where do we start from? We start from some statistics. So you probably know that, but that more than 80% of UNESCO World Heritage properties closed down due to COVID-19. For example, Louvre, which was the most visited museum in the world with over 10 million visitors in 2019, after reopening at the beginning of July 2020, recorded a decrease in visitors of 80%. So not only museums felt this decrease, it is the case also with especially music and of course also in tourism. However, what we see is a rise in streaming and online services. Therefore, digital consumption of music, films, television, and other art forms is sought for. What's interesting is that there was a boom in reading. For example, in the UK, fiction sales climbed up a third, and children's educational titles went up as much as 234%. A similar situation was recorded in the US, where a 66% lift in sales of children's nonfiction books was recorded. Then a substantial increase in gaming was seen, like 22% in the US, 20% in the UK, as well as TV, obviously, a video streaming, as much as 524% rise in the video sharing form from the platforms such as Twitch, specifically their music and performance. Of course, virtual travel opportunities also augmented. So I'm presenting these statistics not because you don't know about it, but just to remind ourselves that we should refocus. Okay, COVID brought some changes, brought some difficulties in our daily operations, but We should see these statistics as an opportunity to change something, to do it differently, and maybe this is also a chance for interpretation. So definitely there are hard times for culture. So cultural sector worldwide felt the job losses equally in the public and private sector, and we all had to adapt to the new reality. What most of the countries, almost every country brought are the ad hoc measures. They introduced them because they were just necessary to enable the survival of the cultural sector. So responses of national, regional, and local governments and social partners were quick. They included diverse specific measures, which were to secure employment, ensure job retention, and maintain infrastructures. Most governments introduced emergency rescue packages, especially economic recovery measures, as to maintain liquidity and ensuring employment, while some other mechanisms were also introduced by pushing the sector towards digitalization and changes in the working practices. However, as I said, a rise in streaming and online services, a boom in reading, a substantial increase in gaming and virtual travel opportunities brought an opportunity for interpretation. So some initiatives have been also brought by the cultural sector. I'm not going to read all of them, but just quickly, we can see that there have been some economic initiatives, some initiatives ensuring liquidity. Of course, some of them focused on shorter working hours, or the adjustments have been made in the daily operations. Heritage places focused on maintenance and conservation activities since they were not able to accept visitors. Some very interesting campaigns have been put forward, such as no refund, where people were encouraged to not to ask for a refund for the tickets they have previously bought, etc., etc. Further on, some public-private cooperation initiatives have been put forward, such as different cooperation networks between culture and heritage institutions with private sectors, such as IT, tourism, or collaborative platforms. What was interesting for the interpretation were the initiatives which focused on the skills enhancement. For a long time, as a researcher, we have been pointing out that skills enhancement is always needed. What we often witness in the heritage sector, that a number of initiatives are done as to increase funding. European Union puts a lot of funding into renovation, restoration of cultural heritage, but often, unfortunately, after quite some time, heritage locations, heritage places need to go to be renovated again. Why? Because of the poor management. So some skills enhancement is often very much needed. But this also requires skills enhancement in interpretation initiatives. So during the COVID-19, some free access to online trainings was recorded, mentorships, workshops, etc., as well as digital shift initiatives. Of course, it now goes in line with the new European Union perspective of financing, because they are going to, they're already putting digital initiatives in front. So online rehearsals have been recorded, guided tours and performance and streaming, different digital platforms, audience development activities, etc. When it comes to tourism, this sector has also been heavily affected, as we know, and some measures or some initiatives besides the governments, therefore from the tourism sector itself, have been put forward, such as marketing activities. Different recovery campaigns were promoted, or specific marketing campaigns. Some of them, very interesting ones, were the development of integrated marketing platforms around a unique story. So as much as this wasn't probably qualified as interpretation, but probably branding, it's a lot about stories that have been made around a unique stories for different locations or even whole territories, while making such marketing platforms. Of course, I'm not saying that this type of initiatives immediately brought new visitors or it made money for the certain destinations, but a lot has been invested in this type of marketing initiatives, and it was actually a chance that in the post-COVID era, this type of initiatives would result in increased visitors or even better paying visitors. Restarting tourism initiatives have been also introduced, of course, those which relate to health and safety standards, or those which introduced some discounts or reduced entrance fees to tourist sites and attractions, or even some changes or restructuring to the destination offer were made. This is mostly very difficult for destinations to do the restructuring, because it entails a lot more and people don't easily change. But you will see further on in my presentation that those destinations which focused on different type of activities have actually profited. Digital shift has also been recorded, as well as the skills enhancement, as well as in the heritage sector or cultural sector. Therefore, virtual visits to cities, museums, sites, and attractions have been put forward. Shopping tourism was also very much put in front. There were online platforms for the acquisition of products with cultural identity by tourists. And when it comes to skills enhancement, online training programs, workshops, different webinars or meetups have been introduced. So what I would like to focus mainly, what we recorded from the research during the COVID times regarding the tourism sector, is that we first noticed the change in the target market. So the initiatives which have been introduced mainly focused on providing well-being. It was needed during the COVID times. However, it was not only COVID which brought us to think about new audiences who focus on well-being products. So giving you an example of an Italian association of the old games, this association has been engaged normally before COVID in safeguarding the traditional games and sports for new generations to learn about them. And they organized the so-called Toccati festival in the streets of Verona, where both community and tourists meet. So they offered the games, the education and interpretation of the games to both to the community and the tourists. So of course, during the COVID-19, there was no way to present it to tourists. So the association proposed to various Italian communities to adapt some traditional games to be played at home, thus providing well-being for citizens, while at the same time preserving and reviving authentic, intangible cultural heritage. So we cannot talk about cultural tourism here, but we can see that the initiatives actually changed the target market. So it makes a substantial potential impact on new audience development. The second change that we noticed is that heritage institutions changed the topic they were dealing with. They promoted again well-being as well as solidarity, which was very much needed during COVID times. So a number of museums, such as Victoria and Albert Museum in London, for example, but also others, offered different initiatives of collecting those exhibits which were in connection with the pandemic. So the focus of their exhibition was actually COVID-19. They explored different pandemic objects or documented solidarity among citizens through a series of online exhibitions. For example, House of European Histories project was documenting different responses to the crisis, involving rainbow banners, decorating European towns with positive messages in different languages, showing Europeans' true colors, such as this one. And the third change that we noticed is the changing the way of consumption and providing experiences. So an interesting example of the change in the way of consumption comes from the Faroe Islands. It can even be called an innovation in tourism and interpretation, where a virtual exploration of the islands was offered through the eyes of a local. So it's actually a digital initiative where the consumer stays at home and uses his computer, his laptop, his smartphone, while at the same time, the local Faroe Islands representative of the local community wears a GoPro camera, a live video camera, and acts as a virtual visitor's eyes and body for the consumer who's staying at home. So he actually walks and shows what the Faroe Islands look like. If the consumer wants him to go left, he goes left or right. Even the drone photos are used so that Faroe Islands can be explored from all the perspectives. So the visitor actually controls his moves and different perspectives are offered. So what we talk about here, again, according to the UN WTO definition, is not tourism, because tourism involves at least 24 hours being outside of your main place of residence. So a new term has been introduced, remote tourism. So we might even now put the very definition of tourism in question, but on the other hand, and in terms of interpretation, it offered some new possibilities. So this is what it looks like, this digital tool. Or very simple, not necessarily innovative, but a very good example of Agile Interpretation, where we noticed that because of social distancing, or even better, physical distancing, we were not able to offer interpretive guides, but interpretation focused on different QR codes where visitors of open air spaces could download the interpretation from the different panels which were put in the nature. Creative tourism was put forward. So what we learned is that small scale initiatives have been preferred. Creative tourism initiatives were in a better position because they do not rely on large number of visitors, and because they offer well-being, because small groups were involved, people enjoyed working something with their own hands. And it is known from the science, when we are focused on something, then our brains are relaxed. They don't think about difficult times. So some nice examples of creative tourism could be like Lulé and Barcelos. Then in Portugal, very nice examples, or in Catalonia, France, etc., etc. So let me just run through a few of them, like shaping the clay, or in Pordanet in Catalonia, also clay, bio, focusing on glass, for example. So our research concluded that 3 types of changes have been introduced: changing the market, changing the product, and changing the consumption. Soft tourism has come forward. It has been put forward in terms of not only creative tourism, but also nature-based tourism, out of the simple fact that we were not able to be in groups, so people wanted to go in nature. But then again, the Faroe Islands put forward also the importance of experiences. Therefore, experience tourism is again in front, as well as remote tourism, which I already mentioned. Therefore, tourism performed without the physical travel. So they all have greater resilience, and interpretation definitely has a lot to say in those types of tourism. So when we talk about the changes in the market, the so-called staycation has been introduced, therefore focusing on the domestic tourism or even the local community. So the rule number 1 in heritage management is always that we do not make a product for the tourists only. It first has to be interesting for the local community. They have to be proud of it, and then we offer it to tourism. So it was a chance to rethink that we do not leave out the local community. When it comes to the changes in the product, it's the well-being that has been promoted. And when it comes to consumption, deseasoning and avoiding masses was introduced. So despite of social distancing, participatory heritage tourism, or participatory tourism in general, was promoted because people are thirsty for experiences. And of course, there is the power of storytelling, which heritage interpreters should focus on. So let me finish with one of the examples from Croatia, where since 2016, in the very small community of Postira on the island of Brač, a world championship in olive picking has been organized. 4 members of the team can participate. So actually in 1 hour, they have to pick as many olives as they can. They're picking them in these types of aprons, as you can see. During the 2020, the World Championship wasn't organized because of COVID, but now they are restarting. And to finish with a story, all those who are coming from the Balkan area know that in our jokes, Montenegrins are seen as the lazy ones. So the power of the stories, which is definitely going to be retold for many years, you can see that Montenegro actually picked 77 kilos, where the second runner-up was 57 kilos. So the power of the stories is something we can focus on and use them, because they can really restart the tourism. Thank you from my side. I hope I'm in time.
Oops. you are very much in time. We have 5 minutes left. I love the olive picking championships. I also that England was in there with the championship. We don't grow olives in England, but maybe there are some in the south.
Yeah, this is actually a very good story, because so many teams were applied for the championship. The nations which don't have to do anything with olive picking really, but they're obviously so interested in it, and the beautiful emotional stories come out of it. Like the Polish, for example, can't wait to return, to go back and to pick olives. And each year there are more nations applying, and they want to participate. So it's all about the experiences. It's all about how we tell the stories.
Yeah, fantastic. Now we have a question.
Peter, excuse me.
Oh,
if I may just add to this, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, of course.
But here with us is also somewhere in audience, one of our members, and she is actually one of the organizers of that olive picking championship. And every year she is there, Vida Ungar. She's our member, and she is also coordinator for natural heritage interpretation, and she's organizer of that. So maybe she can say few words about that, if you want to hear about that, if it's interesting subject for you. Just that.
Yeah, hi, here I am. Thanks, Max. I was really surprised to see this as an example. Is a good example. I am actually the PR team for this olive picking championship, and obviously we are doing a good job because it is really a tiny event, not very much supported by anything except the local community, who is really engaged in that. And as I wrote in the comments, the British team and the one guy from the British team has like packaging a factory, and so he's packaging the olives. That is the connection. Yeah. Also, all other teams have some connection, like the Hungarian team has a shop specialized in olive products, and so it is a very good story. Daniela, thank you for including it as a good practice.
Sure.
Thank you, Vida. There is a comment here from Helena and Daniela, which is about the
digitalisation.
Sorry, and is this the way forward? Is this a replacement, or is it simply an addition?
No. Helena, just to save time, I totally agree with you. I think that digitalisation can only be a tool, and it should be used as a tool. Why not? But we shouldn't focus only on digitalisation. Of course, COVID-19 brought us the physical distancing, so it wasn't so easy to interpret things physically, right? But I think we should put forward other types of interpretation as a must, actually, and we should be innovative in that respect, while digitalization can be really a good tool, but not the only one.
Right, okay. And Valia asks about the interaction in the Faroe Islands between the person who was the, if you like, the camera operative and the community. Was there any relationship there or any feedback from the community on that?
Okay, so the relationship is well, reduced, I would say, in what the consumer wants to see, hear, etc., etc. I have really no idea if there is some feedback on this. So I don't know if the program still is still on. I haven't tried it. I just learned about it from my research. So I'm really probably not the best person to come up with the details of what Valia is asking for. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, I think we have come up to the end of our time. Daniela, many thanks for your presentation. Really interesting feedback on what's been happening during the COVID times.